I would ask for like 2 to 3 reviews from people who are similar to you, who have gone through this person's coaching. I would see if there was a way that they could sit in on a potential coaching session or webinar that you have to see what you do. I would have a conversation, and we have really good spidey senses with ADHD. So trust that intuition, but also going back to the experience. If you need help with X, you're likely going to want your coach to have gone through X so they can teach you X.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Ask Me Anything for Successful with ADHD. I have my podcast host, friend, client, colleague, all the things, Marc, asking me the amazing questions from our community, from my newsletter, which you can go subscribe to. What we do is we send out a form every month with questions related to a topic, and people type in the questions that they have, and Marc is here to ask me those questions. So thank you, Marc.
You're welcome. I love doing these now. I'm looking forward to these. After our first one, I thought the first one went really well, so hopefully we'll do just as well this time around. Yeah.
I agree. It was great.
Cool. You want to just dive right in?
Bring it on.
All right, cool. Well, I got these questions from you ahead of time, and I wanted to start with this one because it's close to my heart as a business person who continues to deal with delegation. Okay, so I'll ask you the question first, and then we can dig into it. This is from Sarah T. in Austin, Texas. Sarah says, I know that delegating is an extremely important aspect of scaling a business. However, many ADHDers or neurodivergent alike fear delegation. Why do they fear it, and what can they do about it?
Yeah, I've heard this question a lot. So as an ADHD person, we, first of all, need to get ourselves planned. We need to have the metacognitive skills, which very often it's a deficit with ADHD because that's part of our executive function. So like looking at that bird's eye view of how we're going to get things done, when are we going to do it, how is it going? So we need to plan ourselves to then delegate to someone else. And if you don't have a system in place that works for you, how are you going to then offload it to someone else in preparation? So that's one of the things. Another thing is sometimes our ego gets in the way and we can say, oh yeah, we know better than everyone else, so I should just be doing the thing, right?
Yeah. So far, you're listing all of my things, so continue. Yeah.
Another thing is we might not have the time or energy to hire the right person. So how do you stop yourself when you're in motion to take a step back, do the whole hiring process, hire slow, they say, right? I do 3 interviews, and then onboard the person that you're going to be delegating to and get into a system that works for both of you, because it's not just what works for you. You have to get to know their strengths and weaknesses as well.
Yeah.
And then also, on top of that, you need to figure out what are the things that you want to delegate, because you might really enjoy some of the things that you're doing. And it could be bringing you a lot of value and your company a lot of value, and it could be a high money role. So those are some of the things that you might not want to delegate. So with analysis paralysis and metacognition and stopping ourselves into action when we're hyper-focusing and knowing when we actually need to delegate, and then trusting someone else and being able to then go back and actually look at their work and then have that accountability. There's a lot of factors in play. And that's why it is very hard for people with ADHD to delegate.
Yeah. And I actually, I mean, you know this, and I deal with learning to delegate all the time. And I've definitely found some hacks that work for me, and I wanted to share them with you to, just to kind of get your take, and hopefully they'll be helpful to somebody, helpful to Sarah. So one of the things that I was dealing with was not wanting to sit down and take the time to teach, say, hiring a new editor, especially my first editor that was going to work for me in my company. I didn't want to take the time, even though I knew she knew how to edit, but I wanted her to edit like me, right? Because my whole thing was people are hiring me and for the great work that I do. So how could I then get somebody to hire me and then hand it off to somebody else, right? I got myself, so I convinced myself, okay, so the way to do that is to train somebody how I do it. And then taking the time to actually do it and sit down with that person and go through it, it felt daunting. It felt like it was going to be a lot of work and time. And it clicked with me. So I basically recorded myself doing the things and talking out loud as I was doing it, as if that person was sitting across from me. So now I'm still getting my work done. Yes, maybe a little slower because I'm stopping to talk about it, but it really made all the difference because now I'm doing it on my time. I'm doing it because I have this work I already have to do. And my editor really appreciated it. Like she actually was telling me, we would talk about it and she was telling me I was loving just sitting back. It was like, she's like, I got my popcorn and I'm just watching because it's fun to watch how other people do the things that you do. Right. So it ended up working out great.
No, I love pressing the record button when I'm doing something that I don't enjoy doing and I know I want to delegate it. I just press the record button on Zoom and I do the same thing. I actually had my business coaching collective, which is my new group for neurodivergent coaches, consultants, therapists who are trying to scale their business with neurodivergent coaches, consultants, therapists. And that was one of the things that came up, like, how do you do it? And what I like about not just doing the video, but you have a database for if that person ever leaves or if you decide to let them go, you put those videos in a project management system where you have your processes like Asana, Trello, Monday, even Google Drive. So they're all there for when you need to use them again.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. And I was thinking also about this question and some of the things you were saying. And I was thinking about, that part you were mentioning about hiring other people and how that in itself can be daunting. When I finally got used to that a little bit, after my editors, I hired my first virtual assistant. And she got to know me so well that when the time came that I felt like maybe we could use another virtual assistant, I asked her to do the research for me, and she found me the candidates, and she even weeded through some of those candidates so that I was only going to be able to sit down with the ones that were most likely a good fit. And that was was that a load off my shoulders.
I do the same thing with Rhiannon. Go on Indeed. Here is exactly what I'm looking for. Only show me 10 candidates or 5 candidates for your future, like the additional assistant or additional salesperson or whatever. And you know what's great too? It's like a pyramid, right? So not a pyramid scheme, but a pyramid. Right. So Rhiannon, my assistant, right? You know her. She videos herself with a task because she has way too much on her plate now for another assistant that we brought on because she's training that assistant now. So of course there's accountability as a business owner to make sure all the processes are being done. But now she's overseeing this new assistant and teaching her the skills that Rhiannon already knew because we had done it before. So she's using that process as well.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. And I'm trying to think, I think that's, Yeah, I think we've got her question, right? I think we gave her some answers. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I love the video concept.
Okay, cool. Well, then let's move on to David L. from Portland, Oregon, who asks, why is it important to get a business coach or a mentor as a neurodivergent business owner with ADHD?
Yeah. So I've had a business coach from after year 1 of business. That has helped me be accountable. And of course, it teaches me what I didn't know. And it helps me stay accountable to operations and numbers and things that a lot of us coaches or neurodivergents, we love what we do, or else we're not going to keep doing it. So we sometimes forget that we're getting paid for what we do, right?
Yeah.
So we just are so in the weeds about doing what we do and what we love to do that we forget about the financial piece and the business piece. So for me, my business coach has helped me with accountability, has helped me make sure that I'm focusing on the right things in business, that I'm tracking metrics, that I'm looking at my marketing spend, that, you know, the clients who come in, I'm not overspending in marketing compared to, you know, what they end up paying to be coached. So looking at all of those details, those fine details that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
Yeah, well, that's something that you speak to all the time, that accountability that as people with ADHD, that really helps us move the needle. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, having that coach to not only hold you accountable, but also show you the important things for your business to help it continue to grow and thrive. That makes all the sense in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And not only like financial stuff, but hiring too. We lead with our heart so often and our intuition. Sometimes we forget about the other pieces in business, even with hiring and scaling. So we have to think about the head, the heart, the feet, the hands, all the pieces of who we're hiring and put it all together and make sure that we're doing it the right way, that we're doing it over time, that we have processes in place, that we don't do it impulsively, and then keep the person there. So it's like body doubling, but also, you know, making sure that you're not doing impulsive things just because you feel like it.
Yeah, right. And, you know, I was just about to ask you a follow-up question, and then I realized we have a question very similar. So I'm going to, Emily K, she's from Denver. Her question is, how do you know you found the right business coach or mentor? And I'm going to add to her question, is it important as somebody with ADHD to find a coach that either has ADHD or is trained to work with people that deal with ADHD?
That's a good question. So I've had 2 different business coaches. One of them does not have ADHD. And she helped me with my copy when it came to my 3C activation program, helping me see the value in it, which so many clients have seen, but I didn't, you know, obviously imposter syndrome. So she did not have ADHD. So she helped me in that. The current business coach that I have is not diagnosed with ADHD, but we think he does have it. I think it depends on what you're focusing on your business.
Yeah.
So not necessarily, but I think when it comes to you operating a business with other neurodivergent brains, then it can be helpful to have a neurodivergent coach coaching you who's experienced it. Because if you don't have that, how are they going to know those nuances?
Right. And the example you just gave, I think, makes a lot of sense as far as what you're saying now is, you know, there are probably different coaches that are going to serve you better as somebody with ADHD, depending on what you're looking for. Like you said, if it's things like copy, yeah, maybe that's going to be somebody who doesn't necessarily have ADHD or isn't trained to work with people with ADHD. But then, yeah, when it comes to like holding you accountable for looking at the books or hiring people, et cetera, that feels like it would be a better fit, perhaps. And ultimately, I guess it just really comes down to you and what's you being the person looking for a coach and what you're looking for in a coach.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think that experience is also very valid. One of the coaches I worked with didn't have as much experience in what I was looking for in growing my business and scaling. So there was only so much I could get out of that coaching relationship.
Yeah.
Right. So it was good for a certain time and place. And then once I started scaling, I needed to seek different counsel. And that's okay too.
Yeah. So let's make sure that Emily is served here. And because I kind of hijacked her question, how do you know that you've found that right business coach or mentor?
When you feel good in the coaching relationship and you walk away from each session saying, wow, here are actual metrics that are showing me that I'm moving the needle, right? My numbers are moving this way, or I'm getting this result that I signed up to get.
Yeah. Okay. So something you just said, when you feel good, and again, being somebody that deals with these kinds of things, when you feel good about it. So I get the analysis paralysis when I'm even looking for a coach, right? So and then what I'm going to say to myself is, well, I don't know, like, yeah, sure, this felt good with this coach, but I'll end up just sitting there debating because I don't have a good feel yet because I don't know them well enough. So how do you respond to that? What's the best way that someone with ADHD can feel good about a decision they're about to make hiring on this coach?
Yeah, good question. So I would ask for like 2 to 3 reviews from people who are similar to you, who have gone through this person's coaching. I would see if there was a way that they could sit in on, a potential coaching session or webinar that you have to see what you do. I would have a conversation, and we have really good spidey senses with ADHD. So trust that in intuition.
Yeah.
But also going back to the experience, if you need help with X, you're likely going to want your coach to have gone through X so they can teach you X.
Yeah, I feel that. And I think giving yourself permission to make a quote unquote mistake in your choice it's okay, right? Like it's just like dating in some regard, right? You're going to date somebody and you're going to figure out whether or not they're a good romantic fit for you or not. And I think the same can be said about finding the right coach. And again, as somebody who sometimes struggles with those decisions, I feel like that's going to getting that permission to know that, okay, it might not work out. It's okay. You'll find you've got others on your list of coaches that you can go back to. That happened to me, right? And I ended up coming back to you, right? So, but I think it's just, it's okay if you're not 100% sure, if it feels right, if that spidey sense is tingling, good. And it's okay if it doesn't work out. You can move on and find somebody else.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we need to know ahead of time before having that discovery call, before talking to the person, is what do I want to get out of business coaching? Have the questions written down ahead of time and know how you're going to be tracking those results. And if you're not seeing those results, as you mentioned, know when it's time to get out, like you said. Yeah.
I like this idea also, what you said previously, that they've had some similar experiences of what you're going through. I think that's, I was thinking about, I was going to ask you, like, what are the best types of questions to ask? But I think that's it right there. It's like, understand what are your needs, and then ask that potential coach, have you gone through this? And then hear what they have to say about it and how they dealt with that. Right?
Yes. Yes. Like they say in coaching, right? In true coaching, it's about asking the right questions. I get that. But when it comes to executive coaching and business coaching for a specific niche that you're looking to get out, like I'm sorry, but you can't just be like 10 steps ahead as the coach to coach a person, even if you haven't done it. Like you have to legitimately have done the thing to give the biggest impact. And sometimes the client doesn't know what they don't know. So like they might say, what did you do? How did you grow? What have you done here? And if you don't have an answer, how are you supposed to business coach them?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, good point. Yeah, so let's go on to the next one then. And this is from Michael S. of Miami, Florida, not too far from you.
We have all around the country.
Yes. And Michael's asking, and actually you mentioned this a moment ago, Brooke, he's mentioning your business coaching collective and asks, can you tell me a little bit more about it? I guess Michael's maybe interested in pursuing it. So yeah, tell us about it. What is it? And how do we get involved with it?
Awesome. Well, hi, Michael. You're not too far. And the Business Coaching Collective was created for neurodivergent business owners who are trying to create a boutique business, like a neurodivergent coaching business, a neurodivergent therapy business, a neurodivergent consulting business. The reason why I did it, because for a couple of reasons. One was because I had one-on-one clients or people who wanted the information but couldn't afford my one-on-one prices. And two, because I had a lot of people asking me, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? And I just, honestly, I don't have the time to have my brain picked or have coffee. Sorry, and I even went to the International ADHD conference and I was so overwhelmed. And this is not to say anything bad about that. It's just there's so many new coaches out there. The coaching business industry has grown 60% from 2019 to 2023. And then in 2024, this year, it's projected to grow to 145,000 active coaches, which is 20,000 more coaches from 2023.
Wow.
Yeah. So in coaching alone, I saw that the ADHD coaching industry was expanding significantly and people wanted to get out of the solopreneur business. People were great coaches, but didn't mean that they were great business owners. And a lot of them failed, right? A lot of them couldn't make it because they didn't have those business senses. So I wanted to give great coaches the opportunity and great consultants the opportunity and therapists to expand because they deserve that. But I couldn't do it in 20-minute talks here and there or one-on-one coaching for everyone. So I did it in this business coaching collective. And what's great about it is that there are like-minded professionals in there from different types of coaching or consulting fields. We actually also have an educational therapist in there. And most of them have ADHD or have symptoms of ADHD. So that is some sort of bonding experience. And we come at it from a neurodivergent lens. So it's not like, okay, this is what I learned in business school. Like, this is what you need to do. It's like, okay, no, here are how you're going to do. Yesterday we had systems and operations. It was lesson 1. This is what you need to consider when making your goals, your vision, and all that. But it doesn't have to be so black and white. You can create your vision with a vision board, because we know that for ADHDers, a lot of us are more visual. So you don't have to get into the specifics of writing 3 to 5 yearly goals. Like, you could even have a word for your yearly goals. So we put that neurodivergent and ADHD lens onto the business coaching collective because we know that that's super important. There's differences from neurotypical business owners and ADHD and neurodivergent business owners.
Okay, so that example you just gave, I'm curious, do you have any other examples, like for you specifically, as far as changing the lenses, right? Like from the typical way it's done, what was something for you that was kind of like a light bulb moment, like, oh, I can look at it that way now? Oh, yeah, that feels much better. Do you have any examples like that?
Yeah. So I loved the fact that this year I was just focusing on one word. So that was the yearly goal. So that was one thing.
What's the word?
Connection.
Okay, cool. That's one of my big values.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Last year was visibility, and we started the podcast, the book, all of that. So that made sense. This year was connection. So it's reflecting on the numbers in my business, but it's this, right? It's really staying focused on that connection piece and staying connected to me, staying connected to my family, staying connected to my clients, staying connected to the ADHD community. Another thing that I would say for ADHD business owners that has helped me is body doubling with my coaches. Knowing that coaching is such an isolating business, and with ADHD, body doubling and accountability is everything. I mean, we can't talk about it enough on this podcast. When I need to get certain things done, I do it in a body doubling setting.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd even do it with my clients.
Yeah, right. And that is something that I'm just going to fully admit. That's something that I avoid. I avoid it at all costs. I mean, the coaching stuff I'm all about, and I get a lot of that accountability through getting coached. But what kind of advice could you give somebody who, here's why I'm avoiding it. I avoid it because I know it's forcing me to do the work I don't want to do. So I don't want to body double. I don't want anybody around to then hold me accountable for it. So like what advice could you give to somebody like me who knows that it probably would help, but avoids it at all costs?
Yeah, for you specifically, and I think we touched on this last time too, is that like sometimes we know you have limited beliefs about yourself and your ability, but at the same time, we also need to see the lens, and I don't recommend this for everyone, but the lens of like, what is the consequence?
Yeah.
What will happen if you don't do it?
Yeah. Because that is a big one for me. That is a big driver for me. That does kick that dopamine in when I recognize, if I don't do this, that's going to happen, and I don't want any part of that. Yeah.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Like you and I have anxiety, and that actually works for me too. And Dr. Amen talks about like that, like obsessive type of ADHD where you're like ruminating on things. For me, I know if I don't look at my calendar on Monday, and I just do that quick, like I've been doing it for 5 years now, just write my week out. If I don't do that and it's not in front of me on my desk, I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. What am I getting myself into? Oh my gosh, I need to do it. So the consequence is I'm going to miss a meeting. The consequence is I'm going to double book. The consequence is I am going to be working my what off until all hours of the night, or thinking that I have to do every single thing that comes my way by email if I don't write out my calendar. Because when I write out my calendar, and I know everyone says, oh yeah, all these coaches say just have another calendar. But for me, I know that if I write out my week and I don't get something done, I just transfer to the next day or where I have blocks. And that works for me. Otherwise, I get so overwhelmed and consumed with all of the notifications and everything that's going on.
Yes. Okay. That's fair. I gotta work on that and keep reminding myself to do that a little more often. Thank you. Okay. So that business coaching collective, if somebody wants to get more information, what's the best way to do it?
You just go on my website, coachingwithbrooke.com, and then / business coaching collective. It's under the coaching tab.
All right, cool. And since we're talking about business here, we've got one. This is from Brian from Las Vegas. Brian says, what are some differences from being a solopreneur and running a business with multiple coaches or consultants?
Yeah. So as a solopreneur, you are doing everything, right? You are pretty much, let me take that back for a second. You are doing the contractor work. You're doing the you're providing services, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
are the person, you can come in and out whenever you want. You can but it all falls on you to serve.
Yeah.
You might get to a point where you say, I love this solopreneur thing. I trust myself. I know the value that I'm giving the clients, and this is great. But you also might come to a point where you're at a capacity issue. And that's why I started growing my business only because I was at a capacity issue.
Mm.
And then when I did that, I noticed, you know what? It's nice not to have 25 clients a week. I can actually focus on growth and expansion and giving more value to my clients by having less clients and more coaches. So it really just depends on what you feel best with. But with solopreneurship, you provide the service and you could still hire executive assistants and other, contractors for helping with delegation, but you're not going to have other service providers to coach or consult or do therapy. If you have multiple coaches, then you have different niches with these coaches or therapists or consultants. So that's kind of nice too, to be able to serve a greater community by having coaches that specializes in different things, or consultants or therapists, right? Or different sex coaches, right? So some people might feel more comfortable with a male, female, they, them, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, you have a team, like a real team where you can collaborate with, and you can do case collaborations, and you can help each other grow and expand. And with ADHD, it can be very isolating being the only person providing services in your business.
Absolutely.
So I love being able to have multiple coaches. And what I will share with all of you listening too, and I've shared this before, is just because you have multiple coaches or consultants or therapists doesn't necessarily mean that your net profit is going to be more.
Thank you, Brooke. And I should address to the audience, if they're noticing maybe things look a little bit different, or maybe sound a little bit different, or you're just feeling like something might be a little different than the rest of the interview here, the rest of this Ask Me Anything, that's because right as Brooke was wrapping up the answer to her last question, you had a power outage, right, Brooke?
Mm-hmm. There was a tornado.
Oh,
in South
even
Florida.
Better.
No big deal.
Oh. Wow. Well, I'm glad you're safe, and here we are. And
here we are.
I think what we can do is let's go with this last question, which is kind of near and dear to my heart too. It comes from Jen S, and she's in Virginia. She asks, how do you avoid burnout and stay fresh and informed as a business owner? And I want to pile on to that too, Brooke. Maybe you can help me too, because I feel like sometimes when I'm feeling burnt out and maybe questioning everything, sometimes I stop and ask myself, is this really burnout, or is this more of an ADHD symptom? Like maybe I'm having a low dopamine day or week, and I'm assuming that means I'm burnt out, but really it could be just a dopamine issue. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that as well.
Yeah, well, I would pause about is it a low dopamine day or burnout, and just say, what is going on in my life, or what have I been doing where it is a low dopamine day? Usually something happened to build up to that low dopamine day, right? Maybe you had a bad night's sleep. Maybe you didn't take your medication. Maybe you've been getting a lot of stress. Maybe you have been run down. Maybe you're getting sick. So it's kind of sometimes like the chicken or the egg. Some of the time you can do things that deplete your dopamine and then cause burnout, but it could also look like a low dopamine day. Or at the same time, you could have a low dopamine day, because maybe you aren't feeling well, right? And it has nothing to do with the fact that you've been working your off way past the time that you should be doing, or you've been stressed out and blah, 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 right? You just happen to catch a cold, right? And it's just impacting your ADHD symptoms and perhaps decreasing your dopamine. So there are things that you can do to increase your dopamine, right? I have a dopamine menu in my book, and you can go for those things. So like stop, pause, evaluate the situation, say, did I forget to take my medication? Did I have protein this morning? Do I need to take my omega, whatever supplements? Do I need to go for a walk? Or have I been pushing myself more than usual? And if it's that, then have your quick toolbox of what do I do in times of burnout? If you're pushing yourself more than usual and you are having a low dopamine day, which also can be burnout, maybe you need to take a break and really take a break.
Well, what does that mean?
Stop pushing yourself. Stop pushing yourself. So your body is depleted. Feed your body. Get the sleep. Attend to your hierarchy of needs. Eat. Drink water. Go for a walk. Just stop working if you have that luxury to do that for a little bit and attend to what has put your body in this state currently.
And maybe really, and I appreciate what you're saying about if you have that luxury, and you can feel free to correct me, but I feel like even if you don't have that luxury, right?
Make
Because
time.
you have to make that time, or else you're just going to keep banging your head against the wall, right?
Yes. I remember when I used to work at school or, as an administrator or a special education teacher, like there were times where I experienced burnout and I would try to push through it. And I remember that my productivity was not any better when I tried to push through it and just, So if you are working for someone else and you aren't your own boss, or you aren't working from home and you don't have the quote unquote luxury to like literally go take a nap or whatever, figure out a way that you can take some sort of break, even if it's a 5-minute break, because that will give you something at least for the time being. And then when you get home from work, say to yourself, what can I do now to support this? And it might be hard to remember the feeling of that burnout from 3 hours ago, but do yourself a favor and set some sort of accountability measure or reminder to give your body the source of nutrients that it needs.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I know for me what works well, and it oftentimes takes me a few minutes or maybe longer to remember, taking that break, like you said, and going outside and just taking in the fresh air, being able to ground myself, literally sometimes taking off my shoes and socks and just walking in the grass, but doing anything I can to distract myself from what's going on with the work stuff and just to reset. That helps me a lot. And even sometimes it might be taking a walk with my wife and venting to her, right? Because then I'm outside, I'm away from the day-to-day at my desk, and I'm unloading. And that tends to clean things out for me and then give me a better perspective. I can't say it's perfect all the time, and it does give me a better, more fresh perspective when I step away and get outside.
Correct. If you are emotionally charged or burned out, your executive function shut down and you can't think. So if you could stop and ground yourself, like you said, or do something that restores a little bit of energy and executive function, then you could figure out what's causing it and how to possibly move forward with it. Like it might not just be that you're working hard. It might be that you have some stress at home. How do you deal with that, right? Maybe with that stress at home, you need to take even more proactive measures. And you have to do more meditation. You have to do more mindfulness. You have to do more exercise. Like speak to someone, do what you can to work through that before you are depleted. And that's so hard with ADHD. I know it's easier said than done because our metacognitive skills to recognize and to stop and think are usually not strong, but we can train our brain and get those reminders to actually do that, because we talked earlier about the consequences, right? And if you continue to feel those consequences will impact you significantly in a negative way. And sometimes it's really hard to bounce back from it. Like some burnout can last months. We're not just talking about 5 minutes a day. So we have to really think about that.
Well, let me chime in. What if somebody is at the point where it not only is it burnout, but they're at the point where they recognize this isn't for them anymore, right? Whether it's their business or their career or what have you, they just don't feel it anymore. They've tried all the things and they recognize I've got to pivot. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because again, as somebody with ADHD, look, that can be a big thing for anybody, right? That's a big decision to have to go through and make. And with ADHD, and when your executive functioning skills aren't as strong, it can cause you to freeze, right? So what advice do you have for somebody who has made that decision? I know it's time to move into a different direction, and I'm terrified to do it. What do you say to them?
Yeah, that analysis paralysis is debilitating and can give you burnout just from the decision fatigue. So surround yourself with people that can hold you accountable to the decision that you made. Create that why funnel. You know what that is because you and I have done it together, but getting to the core root of why you've made that decision. So when you second guess yourself and you say, oh no, it's easier to do this and not make that hard decision that might give me more of an impact of what I want, you go back to that visual reminder of why you did make that decision. But having your community of people that you share your decision with and they can hold you accountable to that is huge, in my opinion.
Yeah. I get that. And I want to find out now, that's the last question that we have for now anyway. And we talked a little bit about your business group coaching. And we even, I believe, pardon me, because I've forgotten since we had the power outage, I believe you've shared a little bit about where to go, but why don't we wrap up with a little bit about that program again, and more so, where do people go if they want to be a part of it?
Yeah, thank you. So they could go to coachingwithbrooke.com with an E, and then just go to the tab on the top of the screen that says coach. And there's two options. One is 3C Activation for Coaches, and another one is Business Coaching Collective. It's that one. So you can scroll, you can look, see all the topics that are presented in the program. And there's a button that says register now. It's rolling admission, so you can literally register whenever, and it will show you the steps to check out. And then once you check out, it will tell you exactly what those next steps are to join and where to go. And then you get instant access to our communities.
Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate doing this. I'm glad that I got to do it again with you. Looking forward to the next one. I know we already have another one planned. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this with you.
And thank you for being a part of it. It's really helpful, I think, as a fellow ADHDer to get inside the brain of the people asking those questions and even taking it a level further for some people who didn't get that opportunity to ask questions. So if you are someone who wants to ask questions for our next Ask Me Anything, subscribe to my newsletter. Go on coachingwithbrooke.com/newsletter, or you can email me at info@coachingwithbrooke. And we send out a survey every month for questions based on topics that are of interest to you guys.
Awesome. Well, I remembered, thanks to you and something you said earlier, I did not take my Omega today, so I'm going to go do that now. Thanks for the reminder, Brooke.
It's all about accountability, Mark.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD Feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.